Dogman in the town park. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I am a college student living in a college town. When I was a freshman some years back, we began to have a problem with a dogman infestation in our local town park. Actually, I don't know that we have more than one of them there, but one dogman seems to me as though it may as well be an infestation. Now, I'm not going to tell you which college I go to or what town park I'm referring to, because I've recently learned not to stick my neck out. Don't bother writing me back either, as I only created this account to send you this story, and I used a VPN while creating it. Feel free to adapt the story however you need to, because once I hit send, I'm officially done with this email and this Dogman story. You may ask why I'm acting so cranky, but believe me, I've got reasons to. I play on the school football team, and I'm a pretty big guy, so I tend to hang out with jocks, and I get along with the ones that aren't complete jerks. But when I was in junior high school and high school, I used to also hang with some of the nerds as well. When I came to this institution of higher learning, and I saw some of the bigger guys picking on some of the nerds, I took it upon myself to intervene and try to put a stop to it. Instead of thanking me, though, the nerds proved to be bullies themselves, and they launched a program to get me canceled. I'll repeat that. They didn't try to get the guys bullying them canceled. They tried to get me canceled for intervening on their behalf. That was when I learned not all geeks are created equally, and some are not worth defending. They told me that I viewed myself as a, quote, white savior, which I guess translates to good guy, but now good is bad for some reason. The weirdest part is that the nerds I was defending are all white as well, so I don't get anything they're talking about at all. According to them, I'm a jock, so I have no right to talk to the nerds. They don't dare go after their actual bullies. They go after me because they know I'm not a bully. Does that make sense to you? Well, it doesn't make sense to me either. I know you like background material on your channel, so that's what that was. Now you should understand why I acted the way I acted in the rest of this story. So let's cut to the part where the Dogman showed up. I was walking through the park whose name shall not be mentioned, which is very standard and suburban, but located right next to an animal habitat or preserve or whatever they call it. I was walking with some of my buddies talking about a girl who dumped me after the nerds I defended told her I was toxic. I was in a pretty bad mood, and one of my friends pointed across the park to where the king of the evil nerds, the one who started all this trouble for me, was sitting in a shadowy corner under a big old tree. My friend suggested we go over and teach the geek a lesson, but I stopped them right there. I'll never defend that guy again, I admit, but I'm not gonna give up my principles and become a bully either. Another one of us in the crowd asked out loud, "What's that? What's that thing?" And we all gave the scene a second glance. There was a really big guy, bigger than anyone on our team, up on a tree branch up over that evil kid. He had his laptop on his lap and he was lost in geek land, so he wasn't noticing this big guy right above him. And as that big guy moved further outward onto the branch, we all let out expletives because we could clearly see that this was a dogman or werewolf. This was a fur-covered creature with fur as dark as a black bear, but it was not a black bear. The body was so human-like that I couldn't believe it. I mean, I wanted to tell myself it was a furry, but if it was, the costume creator should go work in Hollywood. That was the most realistic-looking costume of all time, if that's what it was. The dog mouth was filled with dangerous-looking fangs, and it drooled a thick liquid down onto the ground. At one point, it looked like the drool was landing right behind the nerdy guy, but he was completely oblivious. His attention was locked hard onto whatever geek culture he was typing away madly about. His earbuds were in, and his eyes never left his laptop screen as the black-colored werewolf thing inched closer overhead. It had eyes that glowed white in the dusk. He did not look like an ordinary animal of any kind. It had ears up on top of its head, like a dog. No man has ears way up on the top of his head like that. And that's when I saw something that made me shiver while standing there. I wasn't in any danger myself, but I can't stand to see someone else being threatened either. I just feel for other people too much, which my father says is my greatest weakness. I saw the Dogman reach down from his branch with a very long arm, and I saw a clawed hand on the end of that arm that looked like it could rip your face off with one swipe. And that hand, I want to be clear, it was a hand and not a paw. That hand was reaching down right for the head of that nerdy guy who had made my life hell. My instincts were to call out to the kid no matter how much damage he had caused in my life. I wanted to save him, but I knew I couldn't. If I said a single word to him, he'd ruin my life even further, maybe get me expelled. If I tried throwing a rock at the Dogman to chase him off, I'd probably be accused of throwing it at the nerd and not the monster. No, this had to be someone else's problem, I decided, and I walked away from the scene. As I did, I could hear my friends behind me reacting with a whoa kind of group noise. They were seeing something that I didn't want to see, and so I just walked faster. I never looked back. I didn't want to know. A dorky, cringy professor of mine who was always trying to start a conversation with me walked past saying hello. I greeted him in a friendly manner and joined him. We strolled along and talked about anything he felt like talking about, while I was establishing an alibi by asking him what time it was, and asking him to repeat that time so that we would both remember it. If that Dogman did something to the nerdy creep, I now had proof that I was not involved in the situation. For the next few days, the guys wanted to tell me what happened after I left, but I wouldn't let them. I even got into a bit of an argument about it, since two of the seniors didn't think a freshman like me should have the right to decide what they would tell him. I didn't even care if it meant getting kicked off the team. I didn't want to know anything about that evil nerd. And fortunately, I never did find out what happened on that evening with the Dogman reaching out for him. I haven't seen that guy around campus since then, but then again, I haven't been looking for him either. I didn't hear about him getting attacked or disappearing though, so maybe he got away. Deep inside, that's what I hope happened. I would never wish harm on even my worst enemy, and I don't care if you think that means I'm weak. I did hear other stories about the Dogman in that park and in that area near it after that. It always, in all the stories, seemed to be hiding in the darkness and looking to pounce out on somebody or other. That was the basic running theme of all the stories, but it never became anything more than a set of rumors going on around campus. What I mean is, the college itself never warned us about any kind of stalker on campus or in town. It was just something that got passed around among the students. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have thought that the whole thing was made up like a creepypasta or a campfire tale. The most recent story I heard was at the end of a Zoom class back last year when we were doing the home learning thing. It was the professor himself who claimed that he had an experience with a Dogman in that very same park. He mentioned it in passing during the class, and when some of us expressed interest, he told us to stick around afterward and he'd fill us in on the details. I guess there were 5 of us still on the call when he told us what happened to him. There's a side of that park that's basically a small woods which connects up with the natural wildlife protected area on the other side, the one I was telling you about. He's got a dog, one of those little yappy dogs, I don't know what you call them. Not a poodle, but this really small dog, even smaller than some cats. So the professor was walking his little dog on a leash over that side of the park when his dog started yapping at something in the woods. The professor figured it was a squirrel or something, but when he heard growling, much deeper and louder growling, coming from those woods, He picked his tiny pup up and began walking away backwards, keeping his eyes on the trees. He claimed that he saw a dog-like bear walk right out of the woods, placing one of his feet on the pathway in the park and staring at him as he backed away. He said it had black fur like a black bear, but also shoulders like a human. His head was too small to be a bear's head. It was much more like a wolf man than like a bear. The professor also included the glowing eyes in his story. After a while, he said, the dogman went back into the woods. It didn't seem to want to run out under the lights in the park, even though there was nobody else in that side of the place. In the teacher's opinion, that dogman could have done him in and his dog too without anyone else even seeing what happened, and he considered himself lucky to have gotten away unharmed. I stayed on the Zoom call longer than anyone else, quizzing this professor, asking him if he was just testing us to see how we would react, or if he really did have this experience. He seemed kind of insulted by my line of questioning, so I apologized, and I told him I thought I had seen something like that myself. I almost spilled the whole story to him, the one I told you, but I didn't want to risk involving myself with that creepy geek again, the one that I had seen the dogman reaching out for. In both stories, the dogman seemed to be wanting to hurt someone. Well, actually, in the professor's story, we only know that he wanted to hurt that yappy dog. But in both cases, the dogman was hostile and threatening. I wonder if there have been disappearances on campus which may have been covered up. I don't know, because I don't even want to ask that question. I think that even asking around on the subject might draw too much negative attention toward myself, and might end up causing me more trouble all over again, which I've mostly learned to avoid. And so, that's my dogman story for you. No happy ending, no heroics, just some sightings and some people afraid to tell anyone about those sightings. I'm extremely curious about the thing, whatever it is, but I'm just as reticent to discuss it, as I don't see how that could do me any good at all. I can't imagine anything but trouble heading my way if I get too vocal about the dogman in the town park. We got another dogman story in a second, but first, here's a brand new rhyme. Today's broadcast is courtesy of Simon, the part of the show where we do rhymin'. May I have your attention? This just in, our executive producer is named Justin. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer, Justin Simon, who made this episode possible. In exchange, we share with him our weekly Sunday uncensored scary stories, far too wild to run on this channel. Not to mention our 21 hours of archived scary uncensored stories, and you can see them too. Just sign up for our Scary Stories PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or else click that join button under this or any of our videos. Our spokes dog Henry Lee Dogman will be along at the end of the show to fill in any details I may have missed. But now, here's another Dogman story, and we call this one The Virginia Dogman Situation. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I went camping once with my uncle in Virginia, and we both got hassled by a dogman. My uncle, we can call him Charlie, treated the situation like he'd lived through this a number of times before, and due to his leadership, we both survived. In fact, it wasn't until I was a teenager that I found out that most people don't believe in the dogman. I had thought it was just another animal like a bear or cougar or Sasquatch. So here's the way things went down on that crazy weekend so many years back. My Uncle Charlie is no longer with us, so I might be getting some of my facts wrong by accident. He would have been able to correct me, but I'll just have to do the best I can. We were camping in the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest, which is not far from Uncle Charlie's old log cabin in the woods of Virginia. Now, they've got official places to camp there, official places to have a picnic, official log cabins you can rent, plus lots more in that national forest, but Charlie was all about roughing it, and he wanted to teach me some survival skills. When he would come to visit me in the city, I would tell him what neighborhoods not to go into, and when I went into the woods, he would sort of do the same for me. I think I was 18 when this happened, but I might have been 17 or 19. I don't really remember. The point is, I was a young man, and Charlie wanted me to learn the ways of the world. After we set up our camp in the woods a little ways from where Charlie parked his truck, he discovered that my father had packed meats in the cooler along with drinks. He hadn't told Charlie that, and this got my uncle very angry. He got a thick tarpaulin out of his truck and wrapped the meat up in it, then hung it high up in a tree. He told me that having the smell of raw meat around a camp would only draw in predators and we'd get in deep poo-poo. And as he said that, literally, as he said that, we heard a growling sound from behind us. We turned around, and there he was, the North American upright walking canid, or Dogman. And he was like right there. I mean, a few feet away. This guy had a head like a wolf, not like a dog, and he was standing on his hind legs. His fur was gray, all different shades of gray, and he held his big, scary paws out in front of him. This was not a werewolf, it was a canine, and it did not have hands or claws. It had very large-sized dog paws. I dove into the tent, and Uncle Charlie fired over the creature's head, which was deafeningly loud. My ears were ringing when Charlie pulled me up out of that tent and told me to watch his back. I had no idea what he meant, but then he thrust a weapon in my hand that he had been teaching me how to use, and he charged off in the direction of the meat that he had hung up in those trees. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me that Dogman was big enough, tall enough that is, to reach up and grab our meat. I was like, yeah, okay. What does that mean? Charlie just told me to watch his back and be quiet, so that's what I did. We reached the hanging meat bag, and then Uncle Charlie started doing his Boy Scout rope tying magic. Soon, the bag was hooked around one tree, and the rope threaded down to Charlie's other rifle, which was wrapped around a separate tree. I couldn't recreate his creation if he gave me 100 years, but he had somehow hooked it up so that if anyone grabbed that big bag of meat up in the air, that weapon was going to fire right below where the bag was. Do you follow what I'm saying here? He turned it all into a trap, and he was hoping that Dogman would walk into it. Or at least I was. We got back to camp and Charlie put out the fire. We zipped up both in one tent, each of us, with our own means of defense, should we get attacked by the upright walking wolf. I was just falling asleep when the sound of a small explosion woke me up with a shock. The Dogman, I said, and then started unzipping myself. I wanted to run over and see if the trap had caught that wolf man that it was set to trap. Charlie stopped me and told me I was a bigger fool than my father, which was a huge insult coming from him. He told me we'd check it out together in the morning. After the sun came up, we marched over to our food tarpaulin trap and found the bag opened, almost as though it had been sliced or scissored open. It did not look like claws or teeth tore it open, it looked sliced. There were remnants of the former contents on the ground, but very little was left of the meat my father had snuck into the cooler without warning either one of us. The rifle had fired once, but Charlie couldn't see what it had hit, if anything. I was amazed and excited and jumping up and down. I wanted to search for the Dogman and find out where he stayed during the daytime. Charlie, though, he grew really grim, and he said we'd better beat it on out of there. I thought he meant go to a different part of the park to spend our second night, but no, he was really shaken up. He didn't want to admit it to me, but I think he was too scared to spend that next night out of doors, even if we drove 200 miles away. He said something about the Dogman having our scent, and that now we had no choice but to leave. If you ask me, though, he was just scared. And when Uncle Charlie was scared, that meant I was 3 times as frightened. Because, let's face it, this was Uncle Charlie's turf. So we split the woods, and that was the end of that weekend. I saw Charlie one Christmas a couple of years after that, but then he disappeared from all our lives, and we never did find out where he went. After 7 years of missing him, the family held a service in which we all told stories about him and formally accepted that he was gone. I never told anyone my story of the two of us encountering the Dogman, but I still wonder to this day if that creature had anything to do with my uncle's disappearance. The only time I ever saw Uncle Charlie scared was that night, and the only thing he was ever scared of was that Dogman. Maybe that creature did in fact have Charlie's scent. Maybe he's the reason we all had to say goodbye to my uncle. Because maybe Charlie's disappearance is directly related to our Virginia Dogman situation. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. We're working on figuring out how to add the $10 level to the PayPal Club too. Hopefully that will happen sometime before August of 2021. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal Subscribers Club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal Club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.